There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes something heartbreaking, that not everyone in his life wants him to grow. Sometimes it's subtle, a sarcastic comment when you're trying to improve, a passive-aggressive jab when you start setting boundaries, a sudden silence when you no longer bend yourself to fit their comfort. Other times it's loud, control, manipulation, emotional guilt traps dressed up as concern. And if you're a man who has ever tried to break free from toxic people, you know how heavy that silence feels, how draining those conversations become. It's always your fault when things go wrong, always you who needs to change. But here's the truth that most people will never tell you. Toxic people don't hate your darkness, they fear your light. Because your growth reminds them of their stagnation, your peace confronts their chaos, and your power, your quiet, grounded, disciplined presence, exposes their manipulation. And once you understand this truth, once you make a single, powerful internal shift, they will no longer be able to control you. Because what toxic people feed on is your reaction, your emotional availability. You need to explain yourself. But when you stop playing their game, when you stop needing to be understood, liked, or accepted, they have nothing left to feed on, nothing left to break, because you've become untouchable, not from ego, but from clarity, from presence, from self-mastery. And today I'll show you how to do that. One shift, one decision, that once made, it will make toxic people irrelevant. There's something you need to understand about toxic people. They don't hate who you are. They hate what you represent. They hate the version of you that's waking up, the one who's getting harder to control, the one who doesn't react the same way anymore, the one who's starting to look them in the eyes and not flinch. You see, toxic people don't fear confrontation. They thrive in it. They don't fear emotional chaos, they create it. They don't fear conflict, they feed on it. What they truly fear are you calm, your stillness, your discipline, because it's in that quiet presence that they realize they can't shake you anymore. And if they can't shake you, they can't control you. That's the real fear. It's not about your anger. They know how to dance with your anger. They know how to provoke it, inflame it, then play the victim. It's a game they've mastered, but your peace, that confuses them, because they don't know what to do with a man who doesn't need their approval anymore. A man who doesn't argue, doesn't explain, doesn't beg to be understood. And the moment you begin to evolve, when you start reading more, training more, walking away from drama, waking up earlier, caring for your body and spirit, that's when they tighten their grip. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something right. You're becoming someone they can no longer manipulate. And for people who are addicted to power, that's terrifying. It's not your transformation they hate. It's what your transformation reveals about them, because your growth shines a light on their stagnation. Your discipline reflects their laziness. Your emotional maturity exposes their immaturity. And your presence, your real, grounded, sacred, masculine presence, becomes a mirror they can't look into without feeling ashamed. So what do? They try to pull you back, not by force, but by confusion. They bait you with guilt. They hit you with old versions of yourself. Wow, you've changed. You're so different now. You think you're better than us. And if you're not grounded, that guilt can work. You start to second guess your path. You feel torn between who you were and who you're becoming. You feel the pull to shrink, to dim your light, just to stay accepted. But that's the trap. Toxic people can't survive in your light. They can only survive in your doubt. And if they can keep you doubting your worth, doubting your path, doubting your instincts, then they still own a piece of you. But let me tell you something. You don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone access to the parts of you they continue to damage. Growth is not betrayal. Distance is not cruelty. Silence is not weakness. It is a strength. It is sacred. It is necessary. And the deeper truth, the moment you decide to keep growing, regardless of who tries to stop you, you're already free. Because real power isn't about dominating others. It's about no longer needing to dance with dysfunction. No longer craving toxic approval. No longer depending on unstable people to validate your worth. That's what they fear. They don't fear you. They fear the man who no longer needs them. And that man is it show you're becoming. Right now, in silence, with every breath you take, with every boundary you set, with every toxic tie you cut. You are no longer a prisoner to their patterns. You are not their project. You are not their emotional punching bag. You are not their responsibility. You are your own. And from this moment forward, the only approval you need, it is the one that comes from the man in the mirror. Let him rise. There is a moment on every man's journey where he reaches a strange kind of exhaustion, not physical, not even emotional. It's spiritual, the kind of fatigue that comes from constantly trying to explain yourself to people who never really wanted to understand you in the first place. You try to justify your peace, your silence, your distance, your boundaries, but no matter how many words you use, they twist it, they question it, they demand more, because that's the game. Toxic people don't want the truth. They want the performance. They want you to stay in the role they gave you, the yes man, the peacekeeper, the emotional sponge. And every time you try to explain your growth, they hear it as rebellion. They hear it as disrespect. They hear it as betrayal. But here's the truth. Most men aren't taught. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your healing. Not your friends, not your family, not the person who's been emotionally tugging on your soul like a leash for years. The moment you stop explaining, the moment you stop justifying why you're not available for manipulation, why you're choosing solitude, why you're not showing up for the drama anymore, you become dangerous, not because you're violent, not because you're cold, but because you're clear, and clarity in a world full of noise is lethal. Because now they don't know how to reach you. They can't find the hooks anymore. They can't guilt trip you. They can't twist your words because you've stopped giving them words to work with. Silence, it is not the absence of sound. It's the presence of self. It means you're no longer asking for permission to be who you are. You're no longer negotiating your values for the comfort of people who never respected them. You're no longer leaking energy to explain to people who have already made up their minds about you. And once you master this, your presence alone begins to speak for you. You enter a room and you don't explain your boundaries, they're felt. You don't argue your worth, it's known. You don't debate your choices, they're lived. Because the man who walks in truth doesn't chase understanding. He radiates it. Now, some will say, but shouldn't I at least try to help them understand? Maybe once, twice. But when understanding becomes a performance, when communication becomes a one-sided ritual of defending your soul, then you are no longer building a connection. You're fighting to be seen in a place where you were never meant to be seen. Let them misunderstand you. Let them whisper. Let them invent stories. Let them fall out of your life. Because the truth is, when you stop explaining, The only ones who leave they are the ones who were never listening. And that's a blessing, that's clarity, that's a weight off your shoulders. And if you ever find yourself being guilted for not explaining yourself, that's a sign you've become powerful. Because now you've become unpredictable, you've stepped off their emotional map. You're no longer bound by the expectation that you must explain your every move to stay good in their eyes. You don't need to be understood to be real. You don't need to agree to be valid. You don't need to be accepted to be worthy. This is what they fear. This is what breaks the game. A man who no longer argues, who no longer reacts, who simply decides that man is free and that man is dangerous because he cannot be moved by noise, only by truth. So stop explaining and start living. Let your silence do what words never could. There's a misunderstanding in this world, a dangerous one. Especially for men, people think that when you become emotionally detached, it means you've gone cold, that you no longer feel, that you've shut down, that you've become some stone-hearted version of yourself who can't connect anymore. But let me tell you what it means. Emotional detachment is not the death of feeling. It's the birth of discernment. It's the moment when you stop letting your feelings run wild and start asking, is this feeling mine, or is it something I've absorbed from someone else? Is this love, or is it guilt dressed up as connection? When you're young or lost, you often confuse love with responsibility. You think it's your job to make others happy, to carry their pain, to fix their chaos, so when someone throws emotional weight at you, anger, shame, blame, you catch it like it belongs to you. And it breaks you slowly, quietly, because you're drowning in feelings that were never yours to carry in the first place. So what does emotional detachment look like? It's the moment you feel their storm and choose not to step into it. It's when they yell and you don't match their volume. It's when they guilt trip you and you simply smile, say nothing and walk away. Not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. You see, clarity is what separates the emotionally strong from the emotionally reactive. Clarity is knowing, I don't need to join your chaos to prove I care. I don't need to justify myself just because you're uncomfortable. I don't need to bleed just because you're hurting. But this kind of strength is not easy, especially if you grew up in environments where love was conditional, where you were taught that being a good man meant always being available, always fixing, always sacrificing. So when you finally stop doing that, people get confused. They call you heartless. They say you've changed. They say you used to be so nice. No, you weren't nice. You were overgiving. You were over-available. You were overexposed to emotional currents that drained you. Now, you've simply learned to anchor yourself. And people who once drank from your energy without ever refilling it, they can't reach you anymore. That scares them, because a detached man is a man who chooses where his energy goes. He feels deeply, but he doesn't absorb recklessly. He loves being present, but doesn't tolerate emotional manipulation. He listens, but he no longer makes other people's instability his responsibility. And this kind of presence, this controlled, calm, still presence, is not cold. It is the warm fire that keeps the room lit, even when everything else outside is chaos. It is the steady mountain that does not bow to the wind, and every man must find this space inside himself, not to become less feeling, but to become more sovereign in what he feels, more intentional in how he reacts, more alive in who he chooses to give that inner world to. So if you've started detaching, if you've begun walking away from relationships that drain you, from people who constantly test your peace, you are not becoming bitter. You are becoming focused, and that focus is what toxic people interpret as coldness, because they can no longer reach the parts of you they used to own. That's what they mean when they say you're different. What they mean is, I can't manipulate you anymore. I can't guilt you anymore. I can't use your emotions against you anymore. And that's how you know you're growing. So stay clear. Feel deeply, yes. Love with integrity, absolutely. But never again at the cost of your center. You are not cold. You are no longer confused, and that clarity, that's what makes you unshakable. There's one thing every man must learn if he truly wants to be free. It's not how to fight back. It's not how to argue better. It's not even how to expose toxic people for what they are. No, it's how to respect yourself so deeply that you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Because self-respect, true, embodied, quiet self-respect ends the game. All of it, the emotional ping-pong, the guilt loops, the back and forth conversations that go nowhere. Head for when the days gone begins to not because the push through the sisk is able left, but because you did. You left the emotional theater they built. You stopped playing the character they assigned you. You stopped dancing for their validation. In that moment, that's the birth of real power. But let's be honest, self-respect doesn't arrive with age. It arrives with awareness. It arrives when you finally get tired of your patterns, tired of always compromising your peace just to avoid disappointing others, tired of walking away from situations feeling drained, confused, disrespected, and blaming yourself for feeling that way. There's a moment when you realize, I am not hard to love. I am not too much. I am just no longer willing to be available for anything that disrespects me. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. And here's the part most men struggle with when you start walking in that truth. People will test you. They'll poke at your boundaries. They'll try to bring up the old version of you, the one who used to bend, overgive, and stay silent. And if you're not solid in your self-respect, you'll fold, you'll go back, you'll re-explain, re-justify, reopen doors you already dared to close. But the man who respects himself, he doesn't argue with reality. He doesn't chase understanding. He simply decides what he will and will not accept. And from that decision, all games end, because toxic people only survive in unclear waters. They thrive where boundaries are soft, where no means maybe, where guilt can still be used as currency. But when your energy becomes sacred, when your presence is no longer a commodity, but a gift, the ones who once manipulated you fall away. Not because you attacked them, but because your self-respect is no longer negotiable. Now listen closely. You don't need to yell to set a boundary. You don't need to make a speech. You don't even need to explain. You just need to know, I don't do that anymore. I don't entertain disrespect. I don't abandon myself to stay liked. That's it. And yes, it will cost you people, but it will bring you back to yourself, and that exchange is always worth it. You will sleep better. You will walk lighter. You will speak less, but your words will carry more weight. Because a man who respects himself no longer seeks to be chosen. He chooses. He chooses peace over chaos, depth over noise, real over familiar, and truth over comfort. That's when people start to notice something different in you. They don't know what changed, but they feel it. Your posture is different. Your presence is harder to shake. You're not defensive. You're not aggressive. You're just unavailable for nonsense. And that's rare. Because most men spend their lives trying to be liked. The few who decide to be respected, however they lead. Not just others, but themselves. So I'll say this to you now directly. If you've been pulled into the same cycles over and over, if you've tried talking it out, fixing it, giving more, and it still leads to the same emotional drain, then maybe the issue isn't with them. Maybe it's you not yet honoring your line in the sand, not yet choosing to love yourself more than you fear their reaction. And once you do, you won't need revenge, you won't need closure, you'll have something stronger, you'll have you. The version of you that's done explaining, done begging, done breaking his back to prove his worth. That man is the boundary, and that man is untouchable. There's a moment in every man's life where he has to choose, be surrounded by noise or sit in silence and meet himself. And it's a hard choice, because noise is comfortable, even if it's toxic, even if it leaves you empty, even if it means spending your time with people who wouldn't notice if your soul left the room. At least you're not alone, right? That's the lie, that being with others, no matter who they are, is better than being by yourself. So you keep showing up to the conversations that drain you. You keep laughing at the jokes that don't align with your spirit. You keep sleeping next to people who touch your body, but have never once touched your heart. And every time you do, you become more disconnected from yourself. But let me offer you a truth that few are brave enough to live. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is sacred. Solitude is where the real man is forged, not in the applause, not in the validation, not in the echo chambers, but in the still, quiet space where there is nothing left to distract you from yourself. That's where clarity comes. That's where healing begins. That's where you remember who you are when no one is watching. It's hard, yes, because when you choose solitude, all the noise inside you gets louder at first. The fear, the doubt, the voices of old relationships, the need to prove yourself, they rise. They try to pull you back into the familiar patterns, back into shallow connection, back into environments where you pretend to be okay just to avoid silence. But if you sit with that discomfort, if you face it, breathe with it, let it pass, something shifts. You start to hear something deeper than the fear. You start to hear yourself, and that voice, it's been waiting. Waiting for you to stop running. Waiting for you to stop chasing people who were never meant to hold your soul. Waiting for you to say, I'd rather be alone and aligned than surrounded and lost. That's a powerful man. The one who chooses solitude over shallow, depth over attention, stillness over stimulation. It doesn't mean you don't want a connection. Of course you do. You were made for it, but you're no longer willing to settle for fragments, for people who only come close enough to take, but never to know. For women who flirt with the light, but have no idea how to hold their shadows. For friends who only love the version of you that doesn't challenge them. No, you are done with that. You are now choosing yourself fully, and here's the irony. The moment you become comfortable in your own space, it is the moment you stop attracting chaos. Because your energy is no longer reaching out from desperation. It's radiating from alignment. The man who is at peace with solitude, he is dangerous. Because he cannot be baited by superficiality. He cannot be seduced by distraction. He cannot be manipulated by loneliness. He moves differently. He speaks less. He listens more. he sees clearly, and from that clarity he chooses. Not from lack, not from fear, but from the truth. So if you're alone right now, truly alone, don't run from it. Sit with it, honor it, let it refine you. This is your initiation. This is where the weak man dies, the one who chased attention, who clung to the crowd, who feared being by himself. And this is where the sacred man is born, the one who walks alone, but walks aligned. He is not empty. He is full of vision, full of discipline, full of inner peace. So choose solitude every time, until connection feels like expansion, not escape. Until people are not your crutch, but your choice. That is freedom, and that is power. There is a type of man that walks through life unnoticed, not because he is weak, not because he lacks presence, but because he has chosen to walk in silence, to observe, to feel deeply without the need to speak loudly. And because of this, he is misunderstood. The world doesn't know what to do with a man who doesn't need attention, who doesn't beg to be heard, who doesn't play the games that everyone else plays. They call him cold. They call him antisocial. They say he's hiding something, but what he's hiding is mastery. What he's guarding is depth. What he's protecting is his energy. You see, the quiet man does not speak just to fill the air. He speaks when the words matter. He acts when the time is right. And because of that, people overlook him at first. In a world of noise, silence is uncomfortable. Stillness is threatening, because it cannot be read, it cannot be predicted, it cannot be controlled. But this is his power. The quiet man walks with patience. He doesn't chase opportunity, he becomes it. He doesn't force connections, he attracts depth. He doesn't interrupt to be noticed. He listens so that when he does speak, his words land like thunder. And that's what people don't understand. You cannot ignore a man who has nothing to prove, because in a world of inflated egos and shallow words, his very existence is a mirror, a contrast, a reminder that presence is not volume, that wisdom is not noise. People misunderstand the quiet man because they project onto him. They think his silence is emptiness, but often it's fullness, so full that he doesn't need anyone to validate what's already known inside. He knows who he is, he knows what he carries, and he knows what the world doesn't see yet, that his time will come. Not by force, not by manipulation, but by the gravity of his inner world, pulling everything into alignment. There comes a moment when the noise collapses, when the flashy ones fall away, when the loud ones run out of breath. And what remains is what's real. That's when they see him, not because he stepped forward, but because everything else stepped aside. And suddenly the man they ignored is unavoidable. His voice cuts through the room. His decisions shape outcomes. His energy commands respect, not because he asked for it, but because he embodied it long before anyone else noticed. This is not about pride. This is about presence. This is about what happens when a man stops performing and starts becoming. You may feel invisible right now. You may feel like no one understands your silence. You may feel like your depth is wasted in a world that celebrates shallowness. But stay the course. Let them underestimate you. Let them overlook you. Let them talk over you, because your silence is doing something they don't understand. It's building weight. It's building gravity. It's building an inner world so steady that when the storms come, and they always come, you won't be moved. You'll stand, you'll speak. And when you do, the room will listen, because they've heard everything else. Now they'll hear the truth, and the truth delivered by a man who speaks rarely but lives deeply, that cannot be ignored. So don't rush to be seen. Don't bend to be understood. Let your silence carve space for your future. Let your presence speak when words aren't enough. The quiet man is not weak. He is not lost. He is simply waiting for the moment when stillness becomes strength, and when the world, finally, has no choice but to listen. And in that moment, he will not shout, he will not gloat, he will simply rise. You've come this far. That tells me something about you. You're not like the rest. You feel things deeply. You see through the surface. And more than anything, you're tired of pretending to be okay when you're not. You've tried fitting in, tried lowering your standards just to feel a connection, tried speaking louder in rooms that were never meant for your voice. And now you're realizing that none of that will ever bring you peace. Because of the real path, it's not about being seen by everyone. It's about being understood by yourself. That's the journey, that's the fight, that's the quiet, lonely, beautiful war you've been walking through every day. And if you're still walking, still breathing, still searching, still choosing growth, even when it hurts, then brother, I see you, and I respect you more than you know. This world needs more men like you, grounded, silent, strong, but not performative, not loud for the sake of being loud, just real. So don't stop now. Don't turn back. Let the silence sharpen you. Let the solitude reveal you. Let the respect you have for yourself become the boundary that transforms your life. And if this message spoke to your spirit, if it reminded you of something you already knew but had forgotten, then do this. Like this video, not just for the algorithm, but as a signal to yourself. I'm claiming this truth. Comment below. Let me know where you are in your journey. Let your voice echo for someone else who needs to know they're not alone. Share this with a brother who's lost in noise. You might be the reason he finds his way back to himself. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Here, we don't just talk motivation. We talk mastery. We walk the inner path. And we do it together. Until next time, stay rooted. Stay still, and never forget the silent ones are not weak. They're just too powerful to need the noise.